idea was this?
You haven't given us time to hide.
You know, if there's one thing I've learned over the years, throwing a lot of money and A-list actors at a project doesn't necessarily make a good movie. I mean, sure, Marvel's 22 movies, culminating in Endgame, did a really good job. And of course, you're never going to please everyone. There's all sorts of shortcomings that anyone can find through that series of movies, but regardless of what they have to say, overall they did a really good job. And nobody, and no amount of arguing, is ever going to convince me that that series of movies is worse than direct-to-DVD sequels. Which brings me to today's review. Happily Never After 2. This movie, if you can call it that, is noticeably the second movie in the series. The first movie seems like it should have had so much going for it. Huge names like Sigourney Weaver, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Patrick Warburton, and George Carlin, to name a few. Sure, it was campy and somewhat, if not almost entirely predictable, depending on who you ask. It was reasonably well done, enough to land in the theater for a while. That being said, it was realistically far from memorable. If they hadn't given George Carlin such a small role, and let him run amok, it probably would have elevated the movie just a touch more. But instead, they give him just about the same amount of time they gave Patrick Stewart's character in Elder Scrolls V, dangling him like a tasty treat before a pack of wild kindergartners before pulling him back, fueling the unruly children with rage, directing their ire at the rest of this movie. The rest of the cast seemed to have their hands tied to some extent as well, ultimately letting the movie flop, grossing around $38 million of its $47 million budget. So you think Berlin Animation would have learned their lesson, taken a few lumps, and moved on to the next project, right? Well, no. It looks like they decided to double down, push forward with a shoddy sequel that had none of the original cast, virtually, and kicked it out the door so fast you wondered if they even tried at all. And boy, does it show. Within the first 5 minutes, we can see multiple points of decline from the first movie. Number 1, animation quality has taken a drastic nosedive. They make Andy from Toy Story 1 look like Michelangelo's David. Toy Story 1 came out in 1995. This came out in 2009. Granted, Toy Story had Pixar's resources, but 14 years shouldn't result in worse animation quality. For additional reference, here's what else came out in 2009. Monsters vs. Aliens. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Ice Age, Dawn of the Dinosaurs. Barbie Presents Thumbelina. Granted, the stories in those may not be top tier by any means, but the animation quality from them certainly doesn't look like failed alchemy summons by comparison. George Carlin's wizard character is nowhere to be seen. Much like the first movie, but at least he hasn't taken off to Scotland. He's just completely MIA, so Mambo and Monk's characters are free to do whatever they want. Granted, the reason George Carlin's character doesn't come back is because he passed away a year before this movie came out, but as I stated earlier, virtually none of the original cast came back for this one, which is generally the case for a direct-to-DVD sequel, with limited exceptions. Character introductions come and go so fast that we have virtually no reason to form any sort of emotional attachment to any of them. It's like they took all the writers, locked them in a room, and said, don't come out until you used all of these under threat of death, violence, or who knows what's worse than that. Another sequel? With that out of the way, let's continue trying to force ourselves to get emotionally invested in the clueless and shallow. Generic King Cole and his beloved wife get 1 to 2 minutes of screen time to introduce their characters, trying to make us understand the Queen is benevolent because she takes carriage rides around the kingdom, routinely kisses frogs to turn them back into princes, and kiss boo-boos better, before dropping dead from a cough. Snow White's character essentially has no spoken dialogue before she goes from being quiet background character to clueless-style diva, complete with brainless entourage, the damsels. Bo Peep, Goldilocks, and Red Riding Hood.
Holla! Holla!
Snow White's character suddenly shifts from supposedly caring about her family to club hopping and how she can sweet talk daddy into getting whatever she wants with big puppy dog eyes and declaring things lame or unfair. Guess he was totally powerless to raise her with any sort of morals or standards. That and raising a kingdom is hard work. Raising children is the wife's job, dagnabbit. King Cole finally realizes something must be done, because Mambo decided to throw the balance of good and evil scales out of whack, ever so subtly, and Monk can't be bothered to tear it all down, I guess, at least not right away. So he decides to find a new mother for Snow White by sending out his trusted advisor Grimm to the fairy godmother dating agency, who insists he fill out paperwork to find the ideal wife for the king. But of course, we can't be bothered with paperwork at a time like this. Snow White must have a mother, and the only qualification or requirement the king has is someone who looked exactly like his old wife. Because looking for your own wife is so overrated, am I right? I mean, seriously, what kind of dating agency runs like this and expects to get any sort of positive result? Welcome to Grimm's Dating Service. There's someone out there for everyone, and we'll find them for you.
Yes, I would like a wife.
Obviously. That's why you're here, right?
Great.
Do you have any other qualifications? Blonde, brunette, soul-filled, soulless? Clueless, to match your personality.
Oh, I want them to look exactly like my old wife.
Okay, that's a start. Anything else?
No, that's it. What else is there?
Really? What else is there? Did you just fall out of the Swan Princess as a rejected extra? What else is there? Did you write the book, How to Offend a Girl in 5 Words or Less?
Actually, that was.
Get out. How far are we into this? That's it? Do I have to keep watching this?
Yes, you must. You don't want the FOMO, do you?
I really feel like I've missed out on nothing, and my life was so much better before I knew this movie existed.
But if you don't, that'll be totally lame and not fair.
That's retarded. I agree.
Was it working?
The movie, surely you can't be.
Serious? No, that's your job.
Surrounded by idiots. But they're my idiots, I guess. Where was I? Oh yeah. King Shallow Cole decided he will marry Lady Vane by the time the cow jumps over the moon?
What?
You know what? Keep going. Whatever. Lady Vane is subjected to about 10 seconds worth of Snow White's whining about how marriage is unfair before she has to go to her magic mirror, which appeared while the scales were tipped, which has magical disguise powers because plot convenience. And now that the mirror suddenly knows that Snow White exists, Lady Vane is no longer the fairest in the land. Flabbergasted that she's no longer the fairest, another tip of the scales generates a magic apple, which instead of putting Snow White into a deep sleep, just makes her brutally honest and rude. So Lady Vane records all of her vitriolic poison gossip and sends it via crystal ball cell phone voicemail to the entire kingdom. Because magic and evil. Well, despite how mundane that is, it's actually super effective. And the unthinkable happens. Everyone is upset with Snow White. So what does she do? Run crying into the forest, where she runs into the 7 dwarves, who initially don't recognize her before she mentions that her dad is the king. Then, like magic, the dwarves remember who her mom is. And, surprisingly, Snow White is nothing like her mom. Naturally, the dwarves know exactly how to fix Snow White's image, by committing her to serve the kingdom, until she realizes the joys of serving, and suddenly forgets all of her selfish and clueless ways.
Hey, it's Snow White!
Holla!
Well, almost all.
Holla!
Just in time for Pete, a shoehorned love interest who's as emotionally invested in Snow White as King Cole is with Lady Vane.
What?
Was that important?
Pizza time.
No, it's wedding time. Get out of my suit. Yep, looks like it's time to get married. And time for Lady Vane to carry in a giant bouquet of flowers, like she's lugging a barrel of something down the aisle, while the organist plays the wedding march on the tabernacle's organ. And what does Snow White think about all this?
Here, if it makes my father happy to marry Lady Vane, who am I to stop him?
But, like, they can't get married. She's totes the villain, yo. Never say anything that retarded ever again, please.
Hey, what's the dwarf doing?
Oh, I guess she cares again. Pete and Snow White catapult themselves over the castle wall, where they run into Monk and Mambo. And Snow White knows them because plot convenience. But they're here to help, and there's no time for questions. Just run! Snow White rushes in, says the king can still marry Lady Vane, but promises she's changed, so she doesn't need a mother figure now. And after apologizing, everyone magically forgives Snow White because the 3 good things Snow White did while she was lost in the woods with the dwarves. Everyone except for Lady Vane.
Mother always told me that if I was beautiful enough, I would be queen.
Nope, she didn't.
Yes, someone else will be queen.
And because she can't get married because Snow White's not a brat anymore, there's only one logical solution.
And if I can't be queen, then mirror, mirror in the hall, kill the fairest of them all. Kill Snow White!
Snow White must die. Lady Vane uses a magic mirror to summon a giant green snake cloud that shoots evil energy, which blasts Monk and Mambo back miles and miles to their own castle because... yeah. Well, Pete deflects a shot and then still gets hit and knocked out instead of dying. Another shot, which King Cole and Snow White deflect with a sword, and make a trick shot with the portrait of the Queen, which hits Lady Vane, sends the mirror down the stairs, which takes another 30 seconds to break after landing safely at the bottom, then suddenly explodes, taking away Lady Vane's beauty. Well, it seems only fair that Lady Vane goes to prison for attempted murder, especially for attempting to murder the king, right?
Please, wait. Dad, may I?
Wait, what?
You don't need a magic mirror to be beautiful.
Really?
Really.
Come on, Lassie. We've got some work to do.
That's it? She's going to do kingdom service? She has no more desire to be evil or to be queen anymore?
All right, everybody, let's party!
Did anyone learn anything from this entire ordeal?
It's away. Come on! Woohoo! Lift it down!
Really? That's how it ends?
Like that's ever gonna happen. What a load of...
Thanks, Berlin Animation and Crazy. I no longer have FOMO. Now all I'm left with is, I wish I missed out. What a train wreck from start to finish. I mean, what even was this? I know in my last review I tried defending people needing to get a paycheck by taking a crummy job every now and then, but this? How do I even describe this? The same shoehorn they used to make us believe that the king was going to marry Lady Vane, or why we should believe Snow White and Pete suddenly like each other, they used in almost every other facet this movie was strung up and duct taped with. You know what? I feel worse for the shoehorn than I do this entire movie. I do. It got treated better than Snow White's glass slipper, and I'm talking about the one that broke. At least that got the sweet release of death before having to deal with Snow White's stepsister's feet too long, and it got used more than...
Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!
Huh? What?
You were screaming something awful. You must have been having a nightmare.
I must have eaten something really terrible if I cooked up something like that in a dream.
Oh? What the movie?
Happily Never After 2.
Really? Tell me about it.
Well, I mean, it started out like...
If you even think of making me relive that entire ordeal, or anyone else for that matter, I'll pump you so full of lead you'll make the Tin Man jealous.
Fair enough.